The holidays are a time for channeling traditions, especially in music. One of the mainstays for traditional music in Boston is a Christmas Celtic Sojourn. To tell us about this year's lineup is the main organizer, the host of A Celtic Sojourn on WGBH Radio, Brian O'Donovan. Thank you very much for being with us, Brian.
Great to be back with you, Chris.
Brian, take us back to why you got this started.
You know, this really came out of a radio program that I clearly broadcast weekly, but in turn put together a very special one every Christmas for national distribution. And largely the idea was to put together a pastiche, if you will, of songs and music and sentiments of the season in a kind of a seamless whole. And that was quite successful for a number of years, distributed widely around the country and getting a lot of positive feedback. And I said, let's do this as a single concert. And we decided to do it at the Somerville Theatre in 2003. And it sold out rapidly. I was surprised. I thought we would be doing one per year, and I would have been very happy with that if it was that successful. But it sold out rapidly. The following year we did 3 shows. They sold out rapidly. We had an opportunity to move it to downtown Boston in 2005 to the Cutler Majestic Theatre. We did 5 shows. They sold out rapidly. And then, as the rest, they say, is history. Now we do 15 shows in 5 different cities. So I guess it caught a flame somewhere along the line. There was some hunger for it, and we're delighted to say that it's where it is now.
Of course, the scale of things, you're talking about music and dance to fill a theatre. It's a bit of a spectacle. What's this going to be like?
It is. It's a bit of a spectacle, but it's also fairly old-fashioned. I am particularly attracted to the idea of variety show. I grew up in the late 60s and 70s in Ireland when television shows were being imported from the US and also Britain. And the variety show was still alive and well. If you remember, you may remember Andy Williams, for example, or Denny Kaye.
Or Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan,
right.
Exactly. They were old-fashioned variety shows that came from even an earlier era of vaudeville and Tin Pan Alley. I actually love that idea. And when I put this together, I just said, let's see where it takes us. And it's one thing changing into another thing. It's a voyage of discovery. It's curated content. A lot of these musicians are top-notch, but they perhaps aren't well known. And this brand allows us to present those on stage year after year, and the audiences seem to enjoy them.
Well, one of the new acts is a group from Canada that look very much at home in Glasgow. They're called Fretless. Tell us a little bit about them.
They are a string quartet in a classical sense. You know, a string quartet is made up of 2 violins, a viola, and a cello, and that's what fretless are. And they use the term fretless because there are no frets like there would be in a guitar or a mandolin. And they specialize, though, in roots music. They play a lot of Irish, Scottish, and their own Quebecois music because they're from Canada. So that's a perfect blend for us. And of course, having strings around Christmas time when you've got great singers, it also provides great background and great wrapping for beautiful Christmas songs.
Well, one of the people returning another classical instrument, Natalie Haas on cello. What's she going to be doing?
Well, she is part of what we call our house band. I mean, they're too high qualified to be really a house band, but Natalie is one of them. She's a cellist, a Juilliard trained cellist, and she's going to be providing a lot of the background music for us and has been part of the show for many years. I think what we'll end up, Krista, this year is 2 cellos on stage. And there's an old adage in theatre that says what you can't hide, emphasize. So we will certainly be doing at least one piece that will be emphasizing 2 cellos. It's going to be quite a trip.
Now, one thing I noticed in your clip, it starts out with Appalachian or bluegrass music and ends up with a high-powered reel from we're back in Scotland. I mean, how does that happen?
We kind of love to explore the origins of Celtic music and the kin, as we call it, the cousins of Celtic music. So regularly we'll go to Appalachia, for example, which you mentioned. Bluegrass, old-time American music is very much connected to the Celtic world, particularly to Irish music and Northern Irish music. And we'll sometimes go elsewhere. We'll go to Cape Breton, Nova Scotia for some Scottish influence, or we'll go to Prince Edward Island for the wonderful French influences there. So another place we've gone to in the past is the Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway itself and the Shetland Islands, and bring those influences to bear on the overall whole that we present on stage for Christmas Celtic.
This has been in the news. We're talking with Brian O'Donovan from WGBH Radio. Brian, another, I guess, premiere this year is going to be Hannah Rarity, a singer from Scotland. Tell us about her.
She is an extraordinary young singer. She's 26 years old. I came across her at my annual trip to Glasgow called Celtic Connections, the big festival. She is just quite extraordinary. So impactful is she, even in her early career, the early stages of her career, that she was named the Young Traditional Scottish Musician of the Year by the BBC back in January. And we thought that she would be absolutely perfect for a Christmas Celtic Sojourn. She's bringing some of her own holiday songs from traditional Scottish music, and she will of course be tasked with singing some of our gems that we do every year, like O Holy Night, for example.
Another performer who's coming back is Maeve Gilchrist on harp. She also sings. Tell us about her.
She's also from Scotland, from Edinburgh. Maeve is an amazing musician all round, and she has become our assistant music director as well. So not alone is she a performer, but she's an arranger and an ideas person, really. She went to Berklee College of Music here in Boston, deep Boston roots now. She's being recognized as one of the foremost composers. I just recently got to see her at Boston Symphony Hall, where she collaborated with members of Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble, and she's writing symphonic work, concerto work, in addition to keeping her Celtic roots.
It's interesting because I saw her clip performing the Richard Thompson song Bees Wing. I was familiar with the song, but it never sounded so much like traditional music as when she was
doesn't
singing
she
it.
do a wonderful job with that particular song? I agree with you. Richard Thompson, of course, was one of my favorite singers and one of the great songwriters, and she takes that song and makes it her own with harp accompaniment.
Of course, the other thing is that this is not just Celtic music, this is holiday music. So where does the holiday factor come in with this performance?
Well, it's interesting. We really model this on an old-fashioned gathering, really on stage, rather than just a concert. I say it's an old-fashioned variety show, but really what I kind of imagine it, and the spirit of it is that I'm opening the door and saying to somebody, come on in, have a beer. I'm the old host, greybeard that says, come and join us and sing a song or bring a song. So the audience is very much part of this. So we kind of go where that spirit takes us. This year, though, the Christmas spirit is really in us in that with what seems like an increasingly broken world, there's some, just some bad news, a lot of social media out there, just makes us feel bad and makes me miss our humanity, basically. And I thought of the Christmas story this year in a kind of a way that I just hadn't really allowed myself to think of it in the past. It's about the Holy Family traveling without a home insecurity. They are traveling the roads, not being welcomed at the inn. So the theme this year is Christmas theme, but it's homelessness, it's the stranger, the traveler, indeed the refugee. And we'll be emphasizing that throughout what otherwise will be a celebration of the holiday spirit.
The traditions stemming from the famine and the clearances. We should mention people who want tickets. You've got a number of performances at the Cutler Majestic Theatre, so how should people check that out?
They can just go to my website, which is WGBH.org. Of course, this is a production of WGBH, WGBH.org/Celtic. And they can find all the information there, links, ticket links, and even video of some of the upcoming performers.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Great to be with you, Chris. Hope to see you at one of the shows. Yeah?
Brian O'Donovan from WGBH.